Well, hello everybody. We are now live. So I am going to take this opportunity, in addition to saying hello, I'm going to put a link up here. And this is a link that sort of goes over everything we've been talking about. Let me see if that's going to work. Everything we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks. Let me paste it again. There we go. So, as we're waiting for everybody to get on here, I just want to say a little bit about myself. I'm going to just I'll wait another 30 seconds. And then I'll give us a little bit of a recap of what's been going on for the last 4 weeks. No, 3 weeks, because today is week number 4. All right, let's start. So the first week, when I first came on live in this series, I introduced myself because a lot of people did not know who I am. My name is Dr. Libby Adams. I taught school for 9 years in the California public school system. But when I realized I wasn't really going to make the difference that I wanted to make in transforming kids' lives, I started my own academy, the Academy of Self-Knowledge. Hello, Kathy Stewart and Luis. I have been doing this for 25 years, and I've made some observations over the past 25 years. And so I wrote an ebook that were sort of my conclusions about the negative emotions and watching people experience their negative emotions and what was going on. So I entitled it The Positive Purpose of Negative Emotions. And so that's what that link is that I put at the very top of this. You can download the book. And week before last, in week 2, there's a flowchart in that book. And I went through the flowchart of how to process the negative emotions properly. Because what we found out in the first week, before I started really talking about the flowchart in the second week, we found out that negative emotions are not bad. That negative emotions are just messengers. Negative emotions are signals to tell us that something's wrong. Just like physical pain is a signal to say that something's wrong with our body, right? And you could say that they're messengers. So if a negative emotion is a messenger, what message is it trying to give? Well, it can only give 2 possible messages. Number 1, the thought is incorrect, so change it. Meaning, if somebody's sitting on a plane and they're freaking out, well, what would we imagine that they're thinking? They're thinking the plane is going to crash. Well, stop thinking that, right? And the second possible message is that we need to take correct action. So if, for example, if I'm supposed to go study for a test, but I'm out, at a party with my friends, then I would feel guilty. What would I have to be thinking to feel guilty? I'd have to be thinking I should be home studying. Is that true? Yes. So when I take the correct action, I go home and study, the negative emotion disappears. Now, last week, I talked about what do we do if the negative emotion doesn't disappear. So all of these are on my timeline. I think it's the 15th of March, the 22nd of March, the 29th of March, these things that I'm reviewing for you right now. So go review, what should we do if the negative emotion doesn't disappear? At that point, then we have to go to a higher level of consciousness. When Albert Einstein said you can't solve the problem with the same level of consciousness or the same level of mind that created the problem, it's like, well, then we better go up to a higher mind than our conscious mind. And that's what I talked about last week. Last week, I was using my book and I was like peeking over my book and trying to get it right. So this week, I actually printed out the page that I wanted to discuss in the book so I don't have to be peeking over. I learned that one. So today, what we're going to be talking about, so last week we were talking about the levels of consciousness and what to do if the negative emotion doesn't disappear. Today we're going to talk about ways of being. So depending on what emotion we're experiencing, we're going to behave in a very different way, right? We behave very differently when we're angry versus when we're happy, right? But what contributes to our ways of being? It's what we heard in the first week in my first Facebook Live. I said our negative thoughts are creating our negative emotions. That's why we have to find out, what would I have to be thinking to feel so angry or whatever. That's what that flow chart is. So one of my purposes in the Facebook Lives is not to give you all the material. I can't. It's to let you know the material is number one in that book, that all you have to do is click on it. It's a free download. And when you get to that book, then after you click on it, and then it says, well, what should you do if the negative emotions don't disappear? And then you click on a video. And then it says, well, let's give you the 45-minute version so you really understand what to do if the negative emotions don't disappear. And that's a 45-minute masterclass. So from the time you click on this link, it's at the top of my feed, but I'll also put it on again at the end. It's at the bottom. Just watch all those. My desire for you is to learn what I'm telling you, but we can't do it in 15-minute segments. So hopefully I'm inspiring you to download the book, read that, look at the flow chart, watch the videos, and then maybe next week we could answer some questions. I think I'll take a little time to answer questions today if there are some, but I want to move on to another topic. So today I said the topic is levels of consciousness and ways of being. So today I'm talking about what's in my 28-day course manual. So I'm starting to give out some of the topics that are in my 28-day course that I teach. So today's topic comes from page 61, and it's called Ways of Being. And there are 3 levels of ways of being. So what are ways of being? Hold on, I'm going to open up to my own book. So I will hold it up so you guys can read it. We're not on, it's very obvious we're not on Zoom, are we? Because on Zoom I can share my screen. So sharing my screen looks like I'm going to hold this page up while I'm reading from my own book. Now, the ways of being are preceded by a thought. So if I'm thinking something, then I'm going to behave a certain way. And ways of being are different behaviors based on the emotions. Let me put it the other way. I'll leave it that way. So ways of being are how we behave when we're thinking something and then feeling a certain something. I think I'll just read this to you. So I'm going to hold this up so you guys can see it, and I'm reading it. Depending on which version of you are operating from, and we talked about that last week. We talked about that there were different versions of you. There's you, your spiritual self, because we said we were going to have a spiritual perspective last week. There's you, sort of what you'd call your spirit or your higher self. And then there's you, your conscious mind. And then there's these parts, these little yous that we're going to talk about next week. I already know next week's topic. It's who are you? Okay, so next week comes from page 5 of the book. We're going to talk about who are you, but it's in that video. If you want to get a jump on it, just watch the video and you'll see a page called Who Are You? But here, let's back to our 3 levels of our ways of being, okay? So, depending on which version of you are operating from, you will notice that there are 3 corresponding levels of ways of being. The Who Are You model sets up 3 different and distinct versions of you. But how do you know from which level you are operating? You will recognize the level fairly easily by noticing 2 things. What is being said, as well as the ways of being that you are experiencing. These ways of being are very different from each other and are created by thoughts and beliefs. Okay, so let's go to the first level here. Let me try and move my fingers so that you can see this. Okay, that's pretty good. So level 1 is called freedom. And obviously this is where we want to be operating, okay? So in the big I, or your true self, right, in your spiritual self, you will experience love, kindness, compassion, empathy, happiness, joy, fearlessness, humility, gratitude, and above all else, peace. In religious terms, they're called fruits of the Spirit, and thus the phrase, by their fruits, you shall know them. You operate from useful spiritual beliefs such as We are all equals in the eyes of our greater power. Things are as they should be. Everything is perfect the way it is. It'll all be okay. So we certainly could use some of these ways of being and be operating at this level of consciousness with all the stuff that's going on, so that we could feel more peaceful and believe, everything's going to be okay. And now it is a spiritual perspective, because from the worldly perspective, things look kind of bad, right? From a spiritual perspective, there's always, all these things will work together for good, that if we've got a bunch of lemons right now, well, then we're going to be looking for the lemonade. And those kind of thoughts come from this highest level of consciousness and these ways of being, okay? And we want to be free from these lower levels of ways of being and free to operate in this more peaceful way of being. All right, let's look at the second level of consciousness. The second level of consciousness is empowerment. This is not a bad level of consciousness to be at, okay? It's not as awesome as the top one, but it's a pretty good place to operate, and it's called empowerment. So look at this. All right, I'll hold it like that. Level 2, empowerment, logic, truth, wisdom, and acceptance. The captain, so the captain is, when I was talking last week, the captain is your conscious mind, okay? The captain will be operating with logic and reason, which is the gateway to wisdom. The way out of the little I pit. And the little eyes are these parts that are believing things that aren't true. We'll talk about that more next week. It takes willingness and courage to consider that there are other ways of looking at people, situations, and events. We contemplate being able to trust this new truth, and we begin to experience the power that results from operating in this level. This is where rationality, clarity, and optimism enter. We stop resisting things we cannot change. We start to accept, let go, forgive people, situations, ourselves, and move on. We begin to trust in a greater power as our bridge to the high road, becoming purpose-driven, committed, and disciplined. I'm still not great holding these things up. One of these times, maybe we should have a Zoom presentation. Okay, so that's the second. So the first one, we had freedom. The second one is empowerment. And the third, we want to stay out of the third level of consciousness. Nothing good ever happens from that. That's what I call the pit of the little eyes. Little eyes are the negative parts of ourselves that are saying things, that aren't true. So let's read this, and you'll recognize this. There we go. That's about as good as I can get. Level 3, victimhood. This level is the domain of the little eyes, which are created when you believe things that are not true. These ways of being result in a person experiencing, a variety of negative emotional states. These little eyes can be angry, violent, vindictive, hateful. Sorry to have to read all these, but here we go. Hateful, resentful, blaming, fearful, anxious, guilty, sad, depressed, ashamed, humiliated, victimized, arrogant, judgmental, critical, pessimistic, hopeless, despairing, suicidal, withdrawn. So bad I have to laugh, right? Okay, withdrawn. Let's see. Resistant, attached. Attachment means the little eye wants something from the wrong source, and it refuses to accept not getting it. It is desire that comes from the wrong source, from a little eye. Additionally, these ways of being can result in negative actions because of poor judgment and misperceptions as seen through the foggy goggles of the little eyes. So you may not totally understand all of what I just said. And by the way, if you want, I'm going to type something here, Academy, Academy of, I'm giving you my email address, a self-knowledge at Gmail. So if you will email me at academyofselfknowledge@gmail.com, I will actually send you this. This is not, it doesn't, when you download the book, you won't get this, but you will get it when you email me, and I'll send it to you. And then after you watch the video and you read the book, then what I'm telling you today will make a lot more sense. Okay, so I'm going to repeat. My aim is not to have you understand all this stuff. My aim is to have you think it's at least interesting enough that you will want to read the book, watch the videos, get this sheet of the levels of consciousness, and then to start to understand it. Fair enough? So what I'm going to do is see what questions we might have. Hello, Salim and Chris, Kathy, Courtney, Jesus. Así es, tenemos algunos amigos de México aquí. Does anybody, besos a ti, Luis, does anybody have any questions? Or last week I said I wasn't going to be here this week. And then if you saw my Facebook post, I woke up the next morning and God said, oh yeah, you'll be there. You'll be there until otherwise notified. So not only am I going to be here next week at 4 o'clock, but I know what the topic is, and it's going to be, who are you? It would be really helpful if you watch that 45-minute video, because it goes over it. And then that way you might know enough to be able to ask some questions. And then also in that 45-minute video, another one of my aims is, when you get to the end of it, there's a pop-up that says, if you would like to have a free 15-minute session with one of the coaches from the Academy of Self-Knowledge, then just sign up and send it in, and then somebody will contact you. You can talk about anything, what's going on, or ask your questions, or any of that, okay? So let me look one more time to see if we have any questions. All righty, I don't think so. So with that, I will say thank you so much for joining me. Why don't I post that link again where you can download the ebook? Okay, let's paste that. So it's at the top, and now here it is again. There it is. So when you click on that, the ebook pops up. There's a little video that explains the ebook. Type your name in, and then you just go in this sequence of watching the videos and all of that. Now, I have been doing this for 25 years, and you know what? I never get tired of talking about it, because this is stuff that I think, as a teacher, that I think people need to know. So on my website, that's the Academy of Self-Knowledge.com, it says what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so when I was teaching school, they told me what I had to teach. Now I have the opportunity to talk about what I think people really need to know. So I'm going to thank you for joining me, encourage you to do what I said, watch the videos, download the book. And also I want to say hello to the people that are not live, but you'll be watching it later. So I know that you're here as well. Thanks for coming. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.